Thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet Voice You Know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by BASF, where you can count on the trusted performance of Alevos seed treatment to protect your soybean crop. Well, after some unneeded pain and plenty of anxiety, the live cattle complex was finally able to close higher again yesterday after receiving confirmation that Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins doesn't intend to open the U.S.-Mexico border for cattle imports anytime soon. This was the news headline that the market needed to see to feel comfortable trading any direction but lower, and it finally came. The feeder cattle complex thankfully found some of the same support in Wednesday's trade as news broke that the U.S.-Mexico border isn't going to open in the near future. And in outside markets, the Federal Reserve voted Wednesday to cut interest rates by 1/4 point in what was an expected move. Today's weather brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
Plenty of clouds around for a Thursday here across Ohio. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at that forecast update. We've got a situation here where a strong area of low pressure that has been down to our south is moving straight north across the Buckeye State today. That's going to give us rain through the day. I think we can see an additional 1/4 to 1 inch today on top of what we've seen already. So good moisture, 100% coverage for today. We get into the overnight tonight. Clouds will try and break up a little bit, and then we see cloudy to partly sunny skies for tomorrow. Tomorrow through the weekend, we see strong northwest flow coming across the Great Lakes. That means lake effect cloud cover will be a thing that we're going to be watching. I am not really concerned about precipitation, though, even though I can't rule out a spit or a sprinkle. I think most of that action for Saturday wants to stay a little bit farther west, coming off of Lake Michigan rather than Lake Erie or Lake Huron. So I think we're going to be mostly dry for the weekend with clouds and some sunshine. High pressure building in for Sunday. Getting on the backside of that high early next week. South flow will allow temperatures to climb nicely. I think we're going to be quite mild Monday through Wednesday. Clouds increase a little bit Thursday, maybe a few hit and miss scattered showers Thursday late afternoon and evening before we go back to dry weather for next Friday the 7th and into the weekend of the 8th and 9th. That 8th and 9th period, though, a little bit up in the air. There's a front that develops to our west, moves through Illinois, Indiana, feels like it wants to fall apart before it gets to Ohio. So time will tell whether we squeeze out any moisture or not, but temperatures stay mild, and we're dry then to start the week of the 10th. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Let's check in with a weekly update from the Ohio Soybean Council and your checkoff dollars at work. Here's Dusty Sonnenberg.
There's been a lot of good news for U.S. soy lately thanks to the work of the Soybean Checkoff. According to Jim Sutter of the U.S. Soy Export Council, typically this news would have made top headlines if the China situation was not taking all the oxygen out of the room. Currently, U.S. soy exports to other destinations other than China are looking very solid, and while China remains absent, U.S. soybean bookings and global demand paints a far healthier picture. According to the USDA's weekly export inspections report, U.S. soy exports excluding China are up 46% compared to this time a year ago. That reflects both competitive pricing and disciplined market diversification. Futures markets are gradually inching higher. The November soybean futures recently closed at 1034 versus 992 last year. That is a 4% increase that has not attracted the attention it should have, again being eclipsed by the China news, and cash market signals are improving as well. In the Pacific Northwest tributary areas, basis levels have firmed, and some North Dakota processors are reportedly paying premiums for nearby delivery. Now, while political obstacles remain behind the scenes, market fundamentals are quietly asserting themselves, and that's a story not being told in the news. Global buyers are continuing to value the high-quality, sustainably produced U.S. soy, and price indicators suggest the world still needs more of it, not less. Today's update brought to you by the Ohio Soybean Council and your Soybean Checkoff.
And thanks, Dusty. The average price of anhydrous continues to lead 5 of the 8 fertilizers higher in the final week of October, according to sellers surveyed by DTN. Anhydrous was 8% higher compared to last month at $842 per ton, making it the only fertilizer with a significant price move, designated by DTN as anything 5% or more. By the way, anhydrous is now 20% more expensive than it was 1 year ago. Prices for 4 other fertilizers were up slightly from last month. DAP had an average price of $9.26, MAP $9.32, potash $487, and 1034O at $667. And of course, those are prices by the ton. And prices for all 8 fertilizers are now higher compared to 1 year ago. Potash is now 8% higher, 1034O 10% more expensive. MAP is 15% higher. Anhydrous and urea are both 20% more expensive. DAP is 25% higher, UAN 32, 28% more expensive, and UAN 28 is 31% higher than last year. DTN gathers fertilizer price bids from agricultural retailers each week to compile the DTN Fertilizer Index. DTN first began reporting this data back in November of 2008. And the National FFA Convention is on in Indianapolis. Joel Penorwood has this update.
We continue our 2025 National FFA Convention coverage by talking with some of the state officers representing the Buckeye states, and it's so good to have 2 of them here with us because they're staying busy. It's not just a time for them to come and talk with their fellow FFA members from Ohio and around the country, but also to get some business done, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. Please introduce yourselves.
Yep. Hello, everyone. My name is Taylor Johnson, and this year I'm honored to serve as the Ohio FFA State Treasurer.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bella Nardecchia, and I am honored to serve as a Vice President at Large for Ohio FFA this year.
What has National FFA Convention been like as a state officer?
We rolled in on Monday night, and we had our kickoff meeting and a little bit look into what the week would look like. And the past 2 days have been committee work heavy. We've been working with our committee groups, getting our reports prepared to go to the board.
So we've been working on lots of different topics that will come to National FFA in the next coming years to propose to the committee just for the betterment of National FFA. And we've also gotten the opportunity to cheer on fellow Ohioans. We have lots of different Ohio FFA members competing today in CDE and LDEs, as well as a national officer candidate.
It is quite a thing, and congratulations to all those that are competing here on the national stage.
Yeah.
Any specific issues that you guys are facing, having to think about with your fellow leaders?
My committees were mixed from all over the country, delegates and state officers included with that. What we've been working on is cultivating the leadership programs that National FFA holds. So that's your WLC, your Next Gen conferences, and just kind of looking at ways that we can further continue to improve those and make them better for those next generations.
For the Ohio AgNet, I'm Joel Penorwood. Our coverage of the National FFA Convention brought to you by Wilmington College. More information at wilmington.edu.
And thanks, Joel. Back with more after this.
Attention construction pros. Purple Wave Auction brings quality equipment to your fingertips. Join our bi-weekly online auctions featuring dozers, excavators, loaders, and more. We provide detailed listings, photos, and seller contact info. Inspect online or in person. With our no reserve policy, every item sells to the highest bidder. Visit purplewave.com today and see why informed builders choose Purple Wave. Transparent processes, real deals, your next great purchase awaits. purplewave.com.
Think biodiesel is just another fuel? Think again. Biodiesel is Ohio innovation on the move. Clean, green, and built to keep diesel engines running strong. It's an engine booster, a soybean supporter, and an environmental champion all in one. Every gallon reduces emissions, strengthens Ohio farms, and powers your ride. Drive with purpose. Choose biodiesel. Learn how at soyohio.org. For more, let's check in with Ty Higgins.
20% of American farm revenue comes from exports. The Motorcade for Free Trade came through Ohio last week to talk about how farmers in Ohio and consumers both benefit greatly from trade with countries around the world. Brian Keel is Executive Director of Farmers for Free Trade.
Farmers for Free Trade is an organization made up of U.S. ag organizations. So we're the national corn growers and milk producers and pork producers. They all support Farmers for Free Trade because trade's so important to agriculture. So what Farmers for Free Trade does is we try to explain to people why trade is important. We try to build support for trade agreements and for expanding export markets.
As the motorcade traversed from the western side of the Corn Belt to the Buckeye State, Keel has heard from a lot of different farmers, but the messages are the same.
What we're hearing pretty consistently is that farmers are having a hard time. Input costs are super high, whether that's fertilizer, tractor parts, farm chemicals, steel and aluminum, everything's more expensive. So farmers are getting squeezed with high costs and they're not able to sell their product at the price that they need to get for it. So that's a recipe for a farm crisis. And I think People need to wake up in Congress and start acting like we're in the middle of a farm crisis, because we're going to start losing farms and we're going to start losing farm families.
His message for farmers is this.
If you're hurting right now, if you're feeling like costs are too expensive, you're not able to sell your product for the price you'd like, you can't find storage space for your beans or your corn, talk to your member of Congress. They're the ones that have authority over trade. We need to be talking to them and saying, hey, do something about this situation. Open new markets, get our markets back, get trade going with China. These are important things.
There's a video with a full recap of the Farmers for Free Trade motorcade stop in Columbus last week, online at ohioagnet.com and on our YouTube channel. I'm Ty Higgins reporting.
And thanks, Ty. Today's market analysis is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company. Excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. For marketing information on your beans to LDC, call 574-566-2113. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets worked through a consolidation type of day on Wednesday, and the markets are going to be all aflutter about the talking points coming out of the President Trump, President Xi meeting here today. Yesterday, some of the news that we were seeing ahead of that meeting went as following. We had a couple of boats of soybeans traded out of the Pacific Northwest. This was seen largely as a little bit of a goodwill gesture, a token, if you will, by the Chinese ahead of the meeting with Trump and Xi. However, there were also some other things that were watching in the marketplace yesterday. President Trump probably not going to eliminate China's fentanyl tariff because that would send the wrong message to other nations. The U.S. is battling drug trade with Latin America and Mexico, and if they drop the China tariff on fentanyl, it would show and argue that the U.S. is softening its anti-drug stance. Overall, though, the expectation was largely one of good news coming out of the Trump and Xi meeting, although certain of us were wondering whether or not there would be something to push it off the rails again. Moving through the rumors that we heard yesterday, China is going to cut its tariff on U.S. soybeans by half to 10% and then make a broad pledge to secure 30 to 45 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans over the next 3 years. By the time that we get into this report and through the rest of the day today, that may be old news or it may be wrong news. Typically, China secures 20 to 25 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans each crop year. A pledge of more would bring it back, or the pledge that they were talking about here would bring them back to near normal. These are non-binding agreements and serve only as a broad pledge. That was one of the bigger rumors that we saw and heard yesterday. Brokers estimate that managed money purchased 3,900 contracts of wheat, 4,100 contracts of corn, 2,300 contracts of soybeans yesterday, even as the market was pretty stagnant through a large part of the day. I'm Ryan Martin.
And thanks, Ryan. Today's market's brought to you by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Overnight at the open, December corn up 1/4 cent at $4.34 1/4 cent. March up 1/4 penny at $4.47. And May is up 1/4 cent at $4.55 1/4. November soybeans, $10.84, up 3 3/4. January up 4 1/4 at $10.98 3/4. And March is $11.09 1/2, up 4 1/4. July wheat up 1/4 cent at $5.67 1/2, and September unchanged at $5.80 1/4 cent. In livestock, October cattle up $3.90 at $231.40. The December closed up $4.32 at $230.90, and February $229.45, up $5.35. December lean hogs couldn't match that, down 5 cents at $80.77. February down 12 at $82.32, and April down 32 at $86.55. Feeder cattle rebound, November up $8.67 at $342.07. January up $9.15 at $334.02. And March, $328.55, up $8.90. And the National FFA Convention continues in Indianapolis. Be sure to check our website for updates at ohioagnet.com. Thanks for joining us. I'm Dale Menyo. This is the Ohio AgNet.